Hi. For those of you who don't know who John Mack was, he was a internationally well-known and respected psychiatrist, Pulitzer Prize-winning author, who risked his entire career at 60-something years old in the early 90s when he met people who were reporting ET encounters and abduction. He met these people and could not dismiss them. In his own conscience, in his own awareness of health and pathology, he knew something was going on that he could not put in a box. And so he sought to investigate. He wrote 2 books on the subject, Abduction and Passport to the Cosmos. So that's a little bit about John. This presentation is not about whether or not people have been abducted by aliens. It is about intelligent, gifted, and sane people who report experiences that defy explanation. I'm going to refer to these people as experiencers and abductees. More technically correct would be to say reported abductees and experiencers, but I'm going to drop the reported or alleged adjective. So I'm going to present a list of gifts and challenges of people who report these encounters. And the list itself was written for experiencers as a way of saying, you're not alone. There are a lot of other people who feel the way you do, who have had these experiences. It's also for therapists and other people who work with this population and people who are interested in the phenomena from the inside. The list is also relevant to people who've had other kinds of extraordinary experiences, like near death and out of body, that's been mentioned previously, drug-induced altered states, and kundalini and other spiritual awakenings. So there are many items on the list that will apply to this group. And I might also add that being human is also an extraordinary experience. So whether or not you fit in the categories named, you'll see things on the list that you can identify with for sure. The list is not exhaustive, and it doesn't apply to all experiencers. So let's begin with the gifts, and I'm going to run through these really quickly. Heightened awareness and sensitivity, multidimensional view of the universe, a recognition of a spiritual dimension to life and to their experiences. Special abilities, very common amongst experiencers, psychic, artistic, and healing abilities. For some, a sense of choosing the experience, sometime in the past or the future. Many experience a resonance with other experiencers. They can pick them out in a room and have a sense of connection. Accept the personal cost for the greater good. For some, the sense that what they've experienced and what they struggle with is worth it for the cause of evolution. Knowledge and perceptions that defy explanation. And a question, what can they do with what they know and feel? How can they save this planet? The question comes through as an inquiry. Okay? That question is going to come up later under the challenges as well. So these are some of the gifts, and if there's time for question, people may have some questions about these. Challenges. Let me also say, before I get into the details of the challenges in ontological shock, that how people process these experiences is different from person to person. There's no one way to do it, but there tends to be patterns. So what's coming is grouped loosely according to some of those patterns. And also there are cultures, as someone just mentioned, about the like Peruvian cultures and others, that are much more receptive to these types of experiences, these expectations, cultural expectations. So it's less traumatic, more easily integrated in life. But here in the Western culture, very much it's about ontological shock. That was John Mack's words. The state of being forced to question one's worldview. And that questioning is cellular. It's deep. It's deeply emotional. It's vibratory. It's palpable. That experience of questioning their worldview. Traumatic memories, sense of being disempowered, overwhelmed, and annihilated. A desperation to protect themselves and their families, and they cannot. Memory loss, confusion, embarrassment, denial, or dissociation, very often seen. Sense of missing time. Unusual physical symptoms, such as nosebleeds, excessive nosebleeds, unexpected pregnancies and miscarriages. A sense of being unable to fit in one's body, being too big to actually get back in, and the struggle to experience one's body as too small. Markings, many of you are familiar with the term scoop marks. Nightmares, fear of being alone in the dark, and fear of sleep. Sleep is no longer a sacred space. It's been, from their experience, invaded. There's no protection in that form. A fear of being crazy. And for some, actually wishing that they were crazy. People have come in to my office and said, I would rather know that I'm crazy than to know that I've had this experience. The experiences are impossible to integrate into daily life. We live in a world that it just can't exist. Fearful of this other world that is associated with loss of control and trauma. And then, in contrast, they may also feel a sense of grief, loss, and anger being here. They want to go home to a world that feels more alive, more vibrant, more connected, more loving than what they know. And for many, the sense of they don't really belong in either world. There's no satisfying explanation available. And so there's a lot of frustration and other intense emotions that go along with that. We want to know answers, and there aren't any good ones anyway. Perception of space-time is altered, and a question, why me? And a lot of people will say to them, why you? People who know, why you? What's so special about you? A dual identity, a sense of a part of themselves that they keep hidden from others and even from themselves, not to be brought forward. And I think, many people have this sense, just being human, of a dual identity, parts of ourselves that we keep hidden and don't really bring out. This is another level of that, much deeper, much more profound in some ways. A non-human identity existing in the past, present, or future, a real kind of feel of a part of themselves that really isn't human, and actually for some the ability to access that part in themselves. But limited opportunities to become familiar with it or to express this identity. They try to appear non-threatening and normal, afraid of what others may see and what they cannot explain, or afraid of being seen as crazy. Related to that is being pathologized by professionals, especially people in my profession. There aren't too many professionals that really accept that this is the same way of having life experience. And so there's very few resources to help them process or cope with what they've experienced. They're frequently disappointed in telling others, even close friends, difficulty sharing themselves fully with close friends or partners. Marriages often suffer from people who report these experiences because the partner really doesn't quite understand. And there's a gap, not just in understanding intellectually, but in understanding energetically and in frequency. Social situations are often uncomfortable or unsatisfying. There is a compelling connection between experiencers. Earlier I said on the gifts that there's a resonance between experiencers, or among experiencers. In this particular form, there's this compelling connection and often wanting to avoid it because it feels it's just a sadness to be connected so much and then have to leave and return to a life in which they can't really bring that part of themselves out. And sometimes those connections will also threaten their primary relationship. There is a gap between old and new reality, fear of what bridging may mean for their lives. And I see this in experiencers that have already done a great deal of processing and even speak on the subject, and still, it's still hard to fully bring forward their full reality as they know it or sense it. Burden of their knowledge, sensitivity, or special abilities. Not easy to live in an insensitive world that has no place for you. Responsibility to help change the world, but how? Again, frustration. Real sense of, I've seen these things, I sense these things, what do I do with this knowledge? And what comes after surviving the experiences? So, that is the list of gifts and challenges. And just in closing this piece, what I want to say is that for us, listening, or for them to listen with, to be listened to with their, let me start that one again, to be listened to with heart and mind, an open heart and an open mind, makes a profound difference for people who've had extraordinary experiences, and it also makes a profound difference for those who are doing the listening, both on a healing level and on an evolutionary level for both parties. And it's been a huge honor for me to work with this group of people. Thank you. So, do we have time for questions?
Here's one.
My daughter recently was diagnosed with lupus, and as you went through those lists there, I recognized a great many of those are symptoms of lupus. Mm. Have you considered that maybe there might be some kind of association there, that either people who have lupus maybe have had an experience like you're talking about, or that it might be these experiences might be a symptom of that disease?
Well, okay, the first part of it, I wouldn't know if people with lupus have or have not had extraordinary experiences. Okay, so I can't really answer, that piece of it. As far as do experiencers maybe have lupus, I know experiencers who've been experiencers for, ages and have no physical symptoms, perfectly healthy people. There's also, families, there's a history of families reporting this, kids and generations. So I wouldn't associate it specifically with a physical ailment.
Yeah, I'm a little concerned that you're not dealing with whether these people were really sucked up into a spacecraft. As a therapist, for example, if somebody came to you and was having dreams of being a Holocaust survivor, I'm just speaking as a physicist who doesn't know anything about your field, but I would think that you would be concerned to know whether the person really was a Holocaust survivor or was just having an anxiety dream. So I just wonder if you have any opinions on the reality of this seeming hallucination.
I'm not here to prove. I can't say, has this person been sucked up into a spacecraft? I can't prove that. I don't know it. What I do know is that they are intelligent and sane human beings who have no reason. In fact, they have every reason not to report these experiences. Okay? And sitting in the room, working with these people, it's a different kind of experience than simply working with somebody who comes in with a delusion or even, a strange dream.
Thank you very much for an interesting presentation. I think the bullet that got the most attention, or my attention, was the problem people have in reintegrating their experience in their daily lives.
Yes.
And certainly you're speaking of the Western world, obviously, right, because in other cultures that's not such a problem. It seems like in the Western culture you have the choice of either trying to put the proverbial square peg in the round hole of religion, or going into depression and seeing psychiatrists.
Yes.
Fortunately, you have organizations like this one which allow an ongoing search and exploration of this kind of phenomena, which I think is very healing and very helpful.
Thank you. Any other questions?
What? Yeah, we have time for one more.
One of the variables that you didn't mention is how often abductions happen. And having dealt with the person who was a frequent flyer abductee for many years, the issue of frequency, I think, is a very important one. I remember reading in a book on memory that there are different psychological mechanisms when trauma happens once versus repeatedly.
Yes.
Would you comment?
I think that from my own experience, people report different kinds of frequency. Once is kind of unusual. People do report one, but as they get into it and in some for sessions, recognize there have been other encounters. And in terms of how much trauma, I think there's a lot that is involved in that. So for some, depending on their support system, the ability to process their experiences, they could have had a lot of experience and do quite well around it, and for some have very little bit, and it just kind of takes their world apart.
Shelley, I have one last question.
Yes.
And that is, you presented a lot of conclusions you came to. Did you use a questionnaire, or was this all based on interviews with the experiencers?
All of this was based on my particular work with various experiencers and speaking with experiences both in my office and in life, So, okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much.